Now it's time for Perform Like a Pro, sponsored by The Wall.
Anytime you're working on an old house, you're gonna run into problems. And today, I'm gonna show you how to fix one that happened at my place. That is a big framing problem from a previous project about 25 years ago. We're gonna upgrade this framing and make sure it's safe, because what I have here isn't. And let me show you why. All right, how I found this is I was pulling all this crazy pegboard off the wall. I love the storage, but man, does it like to hide spiders. So we're getting rid of the spiders. But I tore this off and found this situation. I have the big beam here that holds up the carport. That was a legal addition they did back in the 80s, not a big deal. The problem is it's sitting on the top plate here, which is these two 2x4s here, but one 2x4. So I don't really have a lot of support, and it's not blocked or anything. So we're gonna add to this, so this carries all the way down. And that's the thing with load. Anytime we're dealing with load, we wanna make sure that goes all the way down to the ground so it's properly supported. That way, if we have a bunch of snow or something, it's not an issue. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take out this rock wool that I put in so we have clear view of what's going on. And then I think we have a broken or a twisted stud to fix. That, we'll explore and see what's up with that. Let's get back to work. I'm a huge fan of this rock wool. Anytime I'm doing insulation, I try to use it. 1, it's almost soundproof. 2, it's fireproof. And 3, water doesn't hurt it. It sheets right off it. It's a spun mineral wool, so it's a great insulation when you're trying to control any of those things. Let me get this out of here. It's just pressure fit. Let me get this out of the way. All right, guys, we had a remodel box put in here at some point, and so that means this is clipped to this pegboard, which means when I pull the pegboard out, it's gonna come with it. So I'm gonna have to take this out. First thing we don't wanna do is make sure that we have no power to this, which we do. The correct breaker is turned off because we don't need to be dealing with hot electrical. So let me strip this box out. We'll put it back in later on. So we're gonna be putting this box back in. I don't have to worry about doing all these things and taking it all out. I just need to disconnect the wires so we can get this box out of here. So what I'm gonna do next is I just disconnected this pigtail from everything else here, so that way I can just take this box out. This has these little tabs on here that loosen this up. And once you get this loosened up, this should just pull right out of here. We're gonna save that for later when we put it back up. All right, here's the problem with pegboard. When it's just up against an open stud like this, we get a lot of spiders. But another thing that's hiding back here is this broken and twisted stud. You can see how crazy this is. It's split down the middle. It's broken. It looks like this was put up there when it was really green and it dried in place because it's the only one that's twisted that way. Now it could be from the load or something else. Either way, this is coming out and we're gonna fix it the right way. All right, first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get this busted up stud out of the way and see how that comes out of here. I'm curious to see how crazy that is. I could get the Sawzall out, but I'm just gonna use my multi-tool, the carbide blade that'll cut through the nails. All right, now, important note, if there was a second story on this, we would have wanted to put up some bracing in here to hold that up. But being this is just an end wall and the load is over here, for this, we're okay for just a few minutes here. So we're gonna put another 2x4 in here, and then I'm gonna cut another one for either side of this so we have this tripled up. So that way we've got all the load being carried. So it's time to cut some 2x4s. Let's go do it. All right, guys, anytime you're working with power tools, slow down. Safety is key here, safety glasses, all the normal stuff. But really, this is where you want to double check your measurements. No sense throwing expensive wood away. So measure twice, cut once. Let's not throw it away. Let me get to cutting here. We got some studs to put up. All right, next I'm going to clean up the job site a little bit. Get these nails cut off that we pulled out. That one broke off, so we're good. So I'm going to come in right here. That way we got room for the studs to fit back in. All right, these studs are 16 inches on center, so when you look at your tape measure, that's what these red things are. So when you line this up, there's 16, there's 32, and so we're gonna use that to make sure that the stud goes into the right spot. So, this up in here, and so if I go lining this up on the 16, you can see where that needs to be. So I'm gonna get that in here and get it knocked over. All right, let's get this knocked into place here. We kind of knew where we were a little bit up here. All right, now you can use structural screws, or here I'm gonna use 16 penny sinkers here. I'm gonna use my air nailer, but it's a battery powered one. And we're gonna toe nail this in here first. So I want that to push it in. And then I'm gonna toe nail it this way as well. That's in there. I'm gonna go up and do the exact same thing up here. All right, now let's talk a little bit about load here, because we have a problem with this 2x4 carrying all that weight. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna slide this in here to beef that up, because we had one 2x4 basically carrying the load of all that. And so when we get this all nailed in and fastened together and sandwiched together, that's gonna give us that continuous load path right down to the foundation, which is exactly what we want. Then we're gonna add some brackets and stuff, so that way if we ever have an earthquake or everything moves around, or we have a huge snow event, nothing can move on it, because if we keep it tied together with brackets, it's gonna be a lot safer in the end. All right, I know this is a tiny little detail, but I wanna make sure we get it right. This beam is a little proud of this, and since we're gonna put drywall on this anyway, I'm gonna get this cleaned up a little bit so my plate that goes up here has got a smoother transition so it's not all in the way of the drywall. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take these toenails out here, where they put these in. All right, I'm gonna use this mending repair plate. This is just a regular Simpson strong tie product. I'm gonna get this centered up here. I already had it, so it's gonna work out well. So that way I can nail it in here, grab the 2x4s, grab the two top plates and the bottom of the beam all at the same time. And that way when I drywall it, it's not in the way. So I got a lot of nails to put in. All right, I'm the king over building, I admit it. So I'm gonna put a couple more brackets down below to make sure this is locked in and it doesn't go anywhere. Since we have that triple bottom plate, we're gonna use that to our advantage. So that way, it can never move. All right, let's start fastening this down. These are 4-inch screws, so they're hefty. All right, guys, that's how we do it. It's pretty simple. We're carrying that load from the very top. We've got it fastened together. We're carrying it all the way down to the bottom where it's locked in. So that's gonna be safe for here on out. Now my next steps, I got a lot of insulation and drywall work to do. That's coming up next. Once you get the framing done, the next step is insulation. Then we finish the project off with some drywall. Let's take a look. All right, guys, our next step here is we're gonna put some insulation in before we get to the drywall hanging, which is why we're gonna be talking about this today. But first, I got some rock wool up here because I wanna keep this nice and quiet and energy efficient in here since this is my studio. So first step, let's get some rock wool up. All right, one little trick for rock wool. Since we framed this, it's gonna be different, so my size isn't gonna work. But now I can come in here with one of these knives, and they make them for cutting this rock wool. It's like a big steak knife. I can just literally cut it down here. All right, there's two ways to do drywall sheets like this. We can either run them up and down or horizontally this way. So I'm gonna put them in this way so we just have a long seam on this side. So that way we have less things to mess with. So now we have to plan out how we're gonna fit these sheets in here because they're in 48-inch sheets, so I don't wanna have to waste a bunch of it. So I know I'm gonna have to cut something. Because if I just put a 48-inch sheet up here, my edge is right here. And it has to be supported by a 2x4. So if I come back this way, that tells me if I come in here at 43.5 and I cut this short to this, that'll give me my 8 foot here, and that leaves everything supported and the best use of my sheetrock. All right, anytime you're doing drywall, this is your most important tool, this 48-inch drywall square, because it makes sure you can do straight lines and mark stuff out. So that is the key to not wasting drywall and to have a good looking installation. So on this one here, I can put the square up here, come down here, because we're starting from 0, and coming down here to 43.5. Now the cool thing with this is I can slide this over this way, and then I can run my knife right down this, and we can cut this drywall. So I'm gonna reach all the way out here. This is where you want a nice, sharp blade. Put your fingers. Cut back this way so I can catch it. There's our piece cut to size. It's really that easy. Now we got to get it up on the wall. All right, the current issue with these light drywalls is they're easier to handle, which I love, but they take a lot more screws to do it right. So I want to see them about every foot or even less to make sure that it's on every one of the studs. It's a little bit more mud, but you're gonna have to cover it anyway. All right, the secret to putting the screws in is you want them just below the surface, but not to bust through the paper because you're gonna cover these up with sheetrock mud. Like over here, this one I overdrove it just to show you. And the cool thing is this edges on all the drywall, this has got a bevel to it. So that is not gonna be a big deal right there, but I'm gonna have to put a screw next to it to hold it because that isn't gonna be strong enough to hold the drywall down. All right, when it comes to building code, generally speaking, we're not gonna be quoting it here, but with an outlet in a garage, it has to be at least 18 inches or above, so we're gonna be well above that. I'm gonna find a good spot for it here. I know we're in this stud bay because we marked it off. There's 4 feet. I'm gonna have a bench in here, so this is gonna be perfect for me. So we're gonna mark this off at 4 feet right here. And that's where we're gonna have the top of the outlet box. All right, a drywall tool works really good if you just wanna use a saw to cut through it, but if you've got a multi-tool, it's just easier. All right, there is our wire. That's exactly where I wanted that to be, so let's do a trial fit on the box. That's gonna be nice and tight. Wow, that fits like a glove. Let me get my screwdriver. Hear it snap a little bit. That means we got it nice and tight, and that's locked in. So much easier than having to use a regular outlet box that's nailed to the studs. All right, when you're gonna tape drywall, which means anywhere there's a butt seam, you need to have the drywall mud and the tape to hold it together. In a garage, it's even good for fire, so it's something you need to be considerate about. Now with the mud, you wanna get the all-purpose mud like this because it's stickier, so it's great versus some of the topping compounds. Those don't hold as well, so you wanna get the all-purpose, or if you've got a lot of taping, you can get the taping mud, which has even more sticky glue to it that helps the tape. All right, our professional tapers out there are gonna make fun of me because I don't have the big banjo, which is the big thing that puts the tape and the mud together automatically. We're doing this by hand. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna get up here and we're gonna be doing this seam. So I'm gonna fill this in first right here. And any of this unevenness, I wanna get that filled in so I don't have bubbles under the tape. And that's where the big problem occurs when you're doing this. You want just enough to kind of get this embedded in here because we're going to need a couple more coats with a much wider knife. So you only need to put enough on here to get it in there, because that's one less thing you have to sand off, so you don't want any of these bumps on here. Now here's where you gotta be patient, and this is something you can do. It's not really that hard. You need to let this dry a little bit. I'm gonna clean up some of my edges because I don't have to sand it that way. And then if there's anything on it, we knock it down after it's all dry, and then we have different size taping knives. So by the time I'm done with this is gonna be out almost a foot with our final coat. And then it's ready for any kind of texture or a smooth wall if you want it to be that. And that's up to you. This is an easy DIY project. I know you can tackle it. It's not that hard.